welcome back to the Business of Laravel podcast, where I talk to business leaders who are working in and with Laravel. My guest today is Joe Rucci, founder of Ghostable and co-founder of Curricula. Joe, would you introduce yourself and tell us who are you and what's your business?
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. But my name is Joe Rucci. I'm the founder of Ghostable, a zero-knowledge security platform helping engineering teams securely manage and share environment variables across their tech stack. Before that, I was the co-founder and CTO of cybersecurity education startup Curricula, and we would train businesses on a range of sizes from Fortune 500s all the way down to startups with maybe one or two employees.
Yeah. And so that gives us kind of at least two spaces for conversation here, which isn't always the case. We've got the, founding and successful exit of something that is a little bit less in the tech space, which, as I told you at the beginning, before we recorded, I'm often trying to focus on, podcast guests who are not just developers, fucking developers. But then we've also got, I think a lot of people are developers building products for developers. And because I told you before, I was like, there's so many of them that I'm wary about having too many on. But you are a successful, seasoned entrepreneur, having built and sold things before. So I think that your take and your approach to building developer software is a little bit different and unique. So I'm excited to hear about how all of our topics of conversation kind of like are relevant on both of those. So off of that, the first question I always ask is, how is Laravel involved in your business? And I'm super curious for both. Let's start with Curricula, but I do want to hear the same answer about Ghostable, and I want to hear more about the pitch about what each of those are as well.
Sure. Yeah. So with Curricula, my experience started with Laravel in 2015 when we launched the company. We were getting ready to do this. I'm of the four founders, I was the technical one. So it's like, okay, the sort of software side is on me. I'm trying to think of a framework, like which one are we going to choose? There was a lot of different choices. I was probably most proficient or felt most proficient in PHP. It was kind of like, should I use Ghostable? Should I use Code Igniter? Because I had used that before in the past. And then there was Laravel, and it was, it's not new. I think it was on maybe version 4 or something like that at the time. But the documentation struck me as being like just so beautiful to look at. If I'm thinking to myself, like, if I have to look at something every day, because this is going to be, I'm committed to this company, right? So like, this is going to be an everyday part of my life. I just felt like Laravel was the right way to go at the time. And that's kind of how I got started with it. I think, my experience as a developer wasn't necessarily far off. Like I'm not, school trained as a developer, right? I didn't go to college for this. It's more of like, I want to build things. How do I get access to the tools that help me build those things? And I saw, Laravel as really that sort of jumping off point as how to get me there. The first, I would say, 5 years of Curricula, I was the solo developer. I'm kind of learning Laravel, learning how, all this stuff connects together and figuring out all the server side on my own, which is difficult. We were running Forge at the time. So we've got load balancers and app servers, and now we're spinning up worker servers to do some of this stuff. And it was a lot. It was like a decent amount of overhead. Not that, Forge isn't awesome. It makes that process pretty easy for one person to feel comfortable, trying to like sell something that's running on all this. Yeah. But yeah, it's a lot for any one person to do. And I think when that started to hit our breaking point where I was like, I'm kind of losing sleep over this on a daily basis now. We started to see rumblings of like, hey, this Vapor thing is going to come out. And then we kind of switched. I think we were one of the first 10 people using it, which was really cool. Yeah. We rode that wave. And I feel like a lot of the success of Curricula over the time span has really just lined up with some of the, growing and success of Laravel as a framework. Awesome. I tell people, no joke, like a big part of our ability to do that from an engineering point of view was as a result of picking Laravel. So it was like the first call I made as CTO and probably maybe my smartest one.
I love that. And so you and I met in 2020. When did like it actually get to the point where you guys were taking paying customers?
So the first 12 months was all kind of build. We were working on some of the software. So like my day would basically, I'd wake up, I draw and I paint, and a big part of the Curricula story is creating these like educational cartoons that would teach people, the ins and outs of having to avoid hackers and things like that. So we kind of dreamed up these like Family Guy style cartoons. And they're kind of like cutesy, cartoon-esque things. It's a big departure from your classic security awareness
Security
training,
yeah,
which is it's very dry. It's very like, you're just kind of sitting there staring at the screen, waiting for it to be over so you can go about your day. So we were like, okay, how do we change that? How do we make this like entertaining, but then also like sneak in meaningful information that actually does make people's like day-to-day safer? So the business, sort of domain information of cybersecurity came from my co-founder, Nick Santora. And then a big part of the creative side came from myself and another founder, Danny. And putting that together, it was like in the mornings I would draw cartoons, I draw episodes and storyboard them. Danny would do a lot of the animation. And then at night I would work on the Laravel side of the platform as a way of just distributing the training material. You could think of it as like an LMS in the beginning, similar to like a Laracast, not nearly as like polished or cool in the beginning, but essentially the same kind of an idea. It's like an LMS to deliver the content.
I had no idea you were doing creative at the same time. I just knew you were the tech guy, so that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to kind of go back and forth between that. I think for me, I felt like I was more of a creative person in the start, and it was like the engineering side was something I'm doing out of necessity. And then by the time we, were acquired, it was more like, wow, I feel more like an engineer than I feel like I'm a part of the creative team now. We sort of hired up on that side. And so it sort of flipped for me. Whereas now I feel more of an, a connection to the engineering end of it.
So how big was the engineering team when you sold?
When we sold, we were only 4 engineers. Super insane. Lean. We've always tried to do it from the very beginning. We've tried to be lean. I think a lot of startups, especially when they do a round, they are quick to hire up these huge teams, and there's nothing against people. Like, I don't want to, make it sound like I'm against hiring, but I think you want to do that in a careful and thoughtful way. Because you can really, you can go underwater quickly when you have, even just on one round, you can easily go underwater. And unless your goal is just to keep doing more and more rounds, I think you want to, just be careful with that and make sure you grow at a pace that's working with the business. So engineers are expensive, especially the ones I'm going to hire. I want to get some of the best of the best. I'm not super into the idea of like, well, hire them at a lower level and then try and train them up. It's like, I need someone to train me, right? Like I need someone to make that has to put me like to shame, right? So like that's the team that we did, is we hired like a smaller group of like kind of A-list engineers, and it really paid off because we were able to have that kind of success, but with a super tiny team.
Yeah. So you guys both took funding and also sold on Laravel, and I've dealt with enough PEs and VCs and stuff like that I've been in a lot of the conversations for, well, you can't use PHP, right? It's this outdated thing from the 90s. How much pain did it cause you to be on PHP?
I do remember like during the rounds, right, when we were kind of going through that process. I don't know that if you've done it, but it's a lot of like road shows, right? Like you got to talk to a million people. They, that just gets you in the door, and then they want to do like a technical due diligence. And a lot of times you would find there's some hesitant nature with that, because they're kind of thinking, well, okay, PHP, yes, is it too old school? I mean, obviously, I think we can agree that that's kind of a ridiculous idea. I mean, half the internet is powered by PHP. I think we're in good company in that sense. But yeah, it definitely comes up. I mean, luckily, I think at least with our private equity people, they were smart enough to not care. They were like, I couldn't care less. Like, it's a numbers game.
Doesn't do the job.
How does this work? Do I have confidence in the founders? And that's the only reason I'm putting the money down. And so for that, they were on board. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of pushback with that. And same for the acquisition, honestly. We were acquired by a Maryland-based cybersecurity unicorn now. Called Huntress, and they were also very smart with that. They were not a Laravel shop or a PHP shop. They were using Ruby. So they saw us and they were like, okay, it's PHP. That's fine. It's kind of siloed as a product. We were kind of coming on board as its own SKU. So I think there was a little bit of a natural fit there, but we were able to integrate the two fairly well. And as they sit even today, one's PHP, one's Ruby. So it hasn't really affected them.
It's funny because when I heard Huntress, I was like, I know of Huntress as I don't often have people very closely tied to their technology, but I was like, they are Ruby people. So I thought that was really cool to learn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I want to talk more details about Curricula, but let's give it a pause. Let's talk about Ghostable. So acquisition happened. Before we talk about the specifics of Ghostable, what was your life transition from, having devoted so much time and energy into Curricula to acquisition? What did you do next?
Yeah. So part of the acquisition was a 2-year contract to kind of go with Huntress and kind of be a part of the merging of the two companies and make sure that the technology handoff was smooth. So I kind of fell back into the same role even after the acquisition of like, I'm basically still working at Curricula, but now it's under, sort of new management, so to speak. So it's definitely a change of pace, I think, from a founder perspective to go from like, I'm the owner of the company, I make the call and now you don't have to.
And a boss.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's good and bad, right? It's like, on one hand, it's really good because sometimes you don't want to have to be the one that makes that call. And it's nice having somebody else that is going to do it for you. And there's kind of the stress of that is kind of off your shoulders a lot. But then, it's a big change of pace of not being sort of in charge or having the team. So something to get used to, I think. But yeah, after I left Huntress, everything was on good terms. I really like what they're doing over there. It's awesome. I can't wait to watch them kind of take their next steps and move into the future. But I think for me, one of the first things I wanted to do is just take some time. Like I've spent so much time, unbelievable hours. The first 5 years, like I can't even count. I don't even, it's like 80-hour weeks, it felt like. And it was just every day. It was the same thing. It was working weekends. It was just like it never ended. So it was nice to kind of take pause and through that transition, really for me, at least in my family, I had 2 kids. I got married, like a lot changed. So to come out of it and have that time to take a break was really nice. I think that lasted for like maybe 2 months. And then I was building something else, right?
Got it. Well, I just want to name real quick. I appreciate the fact that because when you said, going from being the boss to, I just immediately hear to not being in charge and having other people telling you what to do. And you were like, to not having to be responsible. And I'm like, yeah, there's something about not being the person that the buck stops here anymore and just being able to just show up and then go home and clock out and the day is over.
Yeah. Yeah. You think like, cause you're really, I mean, at least if you're building something that you plan on being acquired, and that's kind of like where our head was in the beginning. Like we knew that was hopefully going to be the end of this. But so it's like you see it coming, but then when it finally happens, it's like bittersweet because it's like, okay. So we're not going to do that Monday morning thing, meeting where I'm going to, circle up the troops and like, it's like the pep talks are over. It's like somebody else is going to do it. So it's interesting. It's different. I think, you gotta do stuff that makes you uncomfortable a little bit like that because it helps you grow. If I'd have stayed much, much longer and sort of, kept doing the same thing, it would probably driven me insane, honestly.
Yeah, I believe it. Okay, so was it 2 months later and then Ghostable was what was next, or was there was a series of things prior?
No, like, I don't know. I'm one of these people. I've got like 8 million ideas for stuff. It's not a matter of like, oh, what's the idea? It's like,
which
can I hone the focus long enough to just stay on one of these things without sort of, trying 8 million things. I'm like a big believer in the beginning of a project, right? That's like the most gratifying part. It's like there's a clean slate. The code base is, it's Laravel installed brand new, right? Like there's nothing in there clouding it up. No like legacy code from, some idea that didn't work, but now it's there kind of stuff. It's like, I call it like file new. It's like this wonderful feeling of just like total brand new. You could do anything you want. You're not held back by anything. So that's like a really exciting part of the project, but you got to be careful not to just constantly seek out those, right? Like you got to kind of pick a lane and go for it. I picked a couple different lanes and I gave them a shot. I think I was just, for me, it's more of like, I'm in a position, fortunately to really, kind of have more freedom in the moves that I make and the choices that I do as far as what I do for work. So I can be kind of picky. I tried a couple different things. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work. But I landed on Ghostable, I think mainly just because I was like solving a problem that I had for myself. Like a lot of products, it's like, this is something I just want to use. So it's like, I should build this and I feel comfortable building this. And, that's kind of where I, went with it.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Ghostable. What is it? What does it do? Who's it for? Yeah.
So I said in the beginning, it's a zero knowledge security platform for people that, are not really aware of what that is. It's basically a matter of, you've got secrets in your environment files. You want to store them on a server, but you don't even want me to be able to know what they are. Right. So like me as Ghostable, mathematically, it should be impossible for me to see what's inside the things that I'm storing. And that's kind of how we keep this zero knowledge concept across the board. The start of like why Ghostable, like why did I have this pain to begin with was a little bit of the journey that I talked about with Curricula, right? So like you start out, you're a solo developer, first 5 years for me, you don't think about environment files all that much, right? I'm sure most people aren't, right? There, it's like, I understand them as mainly configs, but okay, they keep like API tokens and keys and stuff like this. And, I understand the app key is important now because it was like a big deal in the news recently, but it's like, beyond that, you just don't think about it very often. But as soon as your team starts to grow, right, like a lot of that changes and you start asking questions like, well, how do I share this, right? Not just for the convenience of it, but like, okay, there's a security angle here, right? I don't want this to kind of be done wrong, or maybe you're going about the day to day of a engineering role and you're rotating a key. It's like, well, how do I keep everybody on the team informed because now their keys aren't going to work and like that one's expired and so there's a lot of sharing. I think just that comes about when you have that team come on. But even if you onboard a person that's not an engineer, if let's say you're keeping backups in Google Docs, because it's like, well, I need to keep a backup of this thing. I'm going to put it in Google Docs. That seems safe. Like, okay, but now maybe the sales team, if it's not set up correctly, have access to that. And they're probably not going to do anything with it. But is that a great idea that they can see what the app key is necessarily? Yeah. So, you fast forward a little bit more, maybe your team grows more. Now you do a round of funding and people start talking about compliance, right? You'll hear about like SOC 2. And those are things that I don't think developers want to deal with on a daily basis, right? It's not like
certainly not.
It's not something fun for us, right? It's like, oh, I have to do this because, private equity is like going to protect their money. And that means you guys have to step up your game from a security perspective, right? So then you start thinking about like, what about audit trails of environment variables? Like who last saw what when and who last changed what when, right? Yeah. So these are some of the things that you want to know maybe after the fact if you suspect that you had an incident or something along those lines, but you definitely want to know at any given time, when was the last time that was changed? Who did it? And like, am I storing these things in a safe way? Like, you're sort of the guardian of your customer's data. And and if that all is sitting behind a database password that's sitting on a, Google Cloud or like, a lot of times I'm sure the story of like somebody says, hey, what's the API token for whatever? And then Slack message later, there it is. Yep. And now it's in Slack.
It's just sitting in Slack. Yep.
It's, and I can't like, I'm not shaming anybody that does it that way because I'm talking from experience, right? Like I didn't know the best way to do some of this stuff. So for me, I saw those things and I saw like, okay, there's an opportunity here to do this. There's tools like, Signal that have end-to-end encryption, that have zero knowledge storage. And it's like, well, can we use some of that and, pair it with, I think, a command line experience that are familiar to developers, have it work across the tech stack. So, regardless of what framework you're using, if you've got, like at Huntress, part of the team is Ruby, part of the team is PHP. Not a lot of big companies like that want to split vendors, right? So like if they can merge the two, they will because it's just easier on paying and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was kind of like, hey, can we do all those things? Can we do it in a way that doesn't break the bank? The goal is to try and get smaller groups that are using this that would be, in particular vulnerable to some of these problems and be able to get them in there using it either free or for very, cheap.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned, environment keys is the primary goal. So your target audience is developers. Developers, I'm assuming also like technical leads, because you mentioned, SOC 2 compliance, stuff like that. So let's talk real quick. The question, one that I ask is, how is Laravel involved in your business? And I imagine there might be some in the background tech stack that we haven't talked about that, but also I'm curious about how is Laravel involved in your marketing and, kind of your connection to the Laravel world.
Yeah, so I recently did Wire Live. I was a sponsor at the event where we got to hang out for a little bit. And I see like the Laravel community of one, that was my first target, mainly because that's, where I feel like I'm a part of. Yeah. So it just seemed like a natural place for me to go and, meet people, have conversations. It's not like, I'm not like a famous podcaster or anything, but I feel like this community, I get them. I understand the conversations that they're having. And like if I can make a product that helps them, I think that would be a product that probably helps everybody, if it's done right, like on a technical side. So I kind of just looked at Laravel first as like, okay, let's kind of tailor it to an audience. And then sort of, it's the same that we did for Curricula, actually. When we first started that, we were making it for a regulatory framework called NERC-CIP. So it's like a very small subset of the utility grid audience is like who we're building this for. And then as we, soaked up a lot of that market, and it's like, okay, there's only so much more you can grow. It's like, all right, now let's expand it, kind of make it work for any, B2B, right? So that's kind of like, I guess, the approach here, and why I chose Laravel was just that was the one that I was using and most familiar with. Plus good people to hang out with, a lot of fun.
Yeah. And is how much of your tool is Laravel? How much of your tool is any other technology?
Yeah. So like first version, and we kind of like spun up a V2 pretty quickly after launch, just out of like kind of getting feedback and hearing where things go. And it's one of the advantages of being like sort of lean in the beginning, is you can kind of make some of these U-turns and they're not high impact across the board. It's really just you and what you're working on. So yeah, when it first started, it was entirely PHP. I was using a composer package on the client side to communicate with the API, which was all backend. Laravel on the whole stack. We're using the tall stack, Livewire, Tailwind, Alpine. Love it. I was, at Wire Live. So yeah, it's my go-to setup on the back end for sure. I would shoehorn that into almost anything I'm working on at this point. But on the client side, we were also using Laravel and PHP in a composer package. And then the downside there was that we were kind of limited to PHP with what clients could interact with it. And it was kind of like, okay, a lot of people are asking, well, can I use this for my, Next.js project? It's like, well, okay. So we rewrote the client side in TypeScript. And then the back end remained as Laravel, although it's taken a little bit of a different shape, because as we move to zero knowledge, the back end just, short of like controlling access controls of permissions of users and who can read what environment variables and write what environment variables, the back end doesn't display them, obviously, because I don't know what they are. So it changed kind of shape in the UI. It certainly slimmed down quite a bit, and a lot of the logic went to the client side. Some of the things you might not think about is like, so we have a feature in Ghostable for validating environment files. It's like something I think I've seen like a couple packages that do something similar. It feels like a nice thing to have baked in, but how many times have you seen like, I deployed this thing and there's like a typo, and it's like, so now that typo is holding back a deploy. So you can set up a like a checked into your GitHub repo. You can check in a configuration file that will set up all of this validation, and then you can run the validate command locally, and it'll keep like a bad deploy from going out. A lot of that logic previously was living on the server, right? So I rewrote everything in TypeScript after having already, written it in PHP, which is fun, Yeah.
So in each of your settings, you've said we. Now, Curricula, we've talked about the team that you have. Is Ghostable just you, or do you have a team working with you?
Yeah, again, it's probably just, habit, but you always kind of say we. I don't know why. That's just always been a thing,
It's the royalty, right?
Yeah, and 10 years of saying it all the time really sort of bakes it in. But yeah, no, for the we now, it's me and the, large language models at work over here.
Well, okay, let's talk about that, because one of our questions is how are you using AI creatively right now? What's your day-to-day usage of LLMs?
Like kind of anywhere and everywhere. Okay. I'm a big proponent. I know some people are sort of never AI kind of people. I don't get it. I don't get that train of thought. I don't understand that. It's a tool like any other tool. Use it as much as you possibly can. I want them to cancel my account for like bandwidth overages, right? Like I don't want them to ever think I'm not using it enough. So yeah, I try and obviously, you can't take everything and it's not perfect. And, there's some work around here, but we're in a time right now where I feel like the tools for a one person startup, it's like we've never had access to this level before. And there's a lot of advantages to running lean. Like, you can kind of see a direction and I don't want to say pivot, but you can sort of, like change direction slightly without having to go through like a huge, process. There's a lot of overhead in just communication. If you get 10 people in a room, try and get them all on the same page. It doesn't matter like what you're talking about. It can be complicated. Even if you have a really good vision and a really good message and everybody basically gets it, it's still kind of complicated when you get that many people involved. So, for me, I kind of see it as like a superpower. You can move quickly. You can change directions if you have to. and the large language models, right? They do as they're told, but I do find it to be incredibly helpful. So yeah, like on the coding side, I'm using it. A lot of the TypeScript work, like I'm not a background TypeScript person, so a lot of the times I'm like, well, how would I do this, or is there a better way to do this? And so yeah, I've been using it a lot on the TypeScript end. And I find that even on marketing, helping me write blog articles, right? Like it's not writing the whole article from scratch. It's like I'm working with it to craft what I want to say and saving, days of work in the process. So yeah, I'm trying to use it as much as possible, and I hope to use it more, honestly.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm not an AI maximalist, but the way I deeply overlap with you is it is a tool. And I'm like, the people who I disagree with most are not people who use it a lot like you, because there's a lot of people I know like you who are solo developers who are just like, my capacity as a solo founder has been expanded. And I'm like, I get it. The people I'm disagreeing with the most are usually the folks who think it is so much more than a tool. And that's also people who are, negative, who are critical of it, because they're often critical of the dream that AI is everything. And I'm like, see it as a tool among your box of tools. It is, and then I'm just like, so anyway, I loved hearing you say it's a tool, use the tool. One thing that's interesting for me, not about AI, but about your business is you have gone from, I presume prior to Curricula, probably being an employee at some point, to being one of 4 founders, to being an employee, but a more important employee, to now being one. I have gone much smaller scope. I've gone from one of 2 founders to 1. And even just my shift from being one of 2 to 1 has been pretty transformational in terms of some good and some bad parts of my job. So I'm very curious, how are you finding the difference between being one of 4 founders and you are not the CEO, you're the CTO, so narrower scope kind of, to now being CEO, CFO, CTO, COO, CMO, what's that transition been like for you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously having other founders is a great thing at times, right? Like there's going to be a day where you're tired or you're not feeling it. And it's nice to have somebody else come and like, cheerlead for you a little bit and like get me back in the mood to want to do this, right? Or like,
or
maybe
like you don't want to do and you're just like, can you just handle this for me?
Yeah, exactly. Or you're going to go do a trade show. It's like going to a trade show is awesome. You get to meet a lot of people, but it's a lot of talking. And it's like, if you go solo, it's not the same as when you go, rolling 4 friends. It's like, it's infinitely better having a group in those moments. And so, like I definitely miss some of that. Just because it's fun to have those conversations on a daily basis. But I do think that, there's also an aspect of riding solo that can be really nice. And it's not like everybody's disagreeing. It's just a matter of, you really can move in a direction that is your direction. And if you feel like you want to change that up a little bit, you can change it up a little bit. And so there is like freedom in that solo working situation. As far as like titles go and, where my role is as like technical founder, like, you wear a lot of hats, right? So like on any given day, I'm not necessarily the CEO of a company, but I'm doing things that maybe the CEO would also be doing. And my, other founders are also like coming in and being tech leads on something, right? So like, another founder will say like, okay, well, like, let's think out the product, right? So we're all product people. We're all kind of creative people. We're just kind of wearing a lot of hats. So I don't know, that aspect of it doesn't feel wildly different, at least in the beginning. By the time we were acquired, we had very like strict lanes and everybody was kind of in like a day-to-day flow. So that change was probably bigger for me going from acquisition to solo. That was really where it felt like, wow, there's like, I have no one to hand these things off to. And maybe that's where some of the large language model stuff really came into play for me, is just like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, it's not perfect, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Like some of this stuff is really good. Yeah. And that would have taken a long time and a lot of people to have done without a large language model. So
and that helps, because one of the criticisms I have of heavy usage of AI and LLMs is doing things that you're not good at, and delegating that to the model ends up with really bad output, because the model output itself is not good. And so kind of one of the things I'm pushing on with people is I'm like, for example, senior engineers get a lot of benefit out of usage of LLMs because they already know all the things, and so they know how to prompt, they know how to review it. And B, they're able to learn what is it good at and what is it bad at because they can review its output. And so they can say, it is a tool, just like any tool. It's useful for some things and not others. You don't use a hammer on everything. You don't use a screwdriver on everything. You know when it's useful.
Yeah.
Whereas a junior just sort of like says, first of all, I don't know how to prompt it. I don't know how to review its work. I don't know how to figure out what it's good at or bad at. And so it's kind of like expanding the gap a little bit there. And so one of the ways that I think that you and some other folks, I think of John O'Nolan and Ian Landsman off the top of my head, who are like single developers, founder developers using, AI a lot, using LLM a lot, is because they know how to do the thing. You guys know how to write. You guys know how to handle the finances of your company. You know how to develop. And so it is now taking that knowledge you already have, but you have to spend less of your time on it because you already have the knowledge, right? It's not giving you knowledge you didn't have. It's taking time off of your plate for things you already understand.
Yeah. I don't see it as like doing things that I couldn't have done myself. It's more of like, it does it faster. And you're limited. I think as a founder, you try and optimize your time, right? Like your time is the most valuable thing that you have. If you spend a day working on something that was pointless, that's a big impact, right? Versus I can send an agentic AI to go give it a shot. And then I can maybe use it. Maybe it's not exactly what I want, but it's like, you know what? Actually, after using it, I don't even like it. So throw it out. And it's like, that, cost me nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like it's part of the subscription. I don't really, it's not a big impact on me financially. And it took me very little time to sort of, roll that together and make a prompt and have it go give it a shot. Or other things like research, so just even for this podcast, right? Like I used it I said, okay, go to the Business of Laravel website, go find the transcripts, grab all of those, organize those as like the most common questions. Give me the top 10, give me the 3 best answers among all the different podcasts, cite them because I want to be able to go and watch those back and like where they answered them. And then give it a shot as answering it as me. Right? Like, let's just throw that one on top. And it's like, okay, some of them are wrong, but some of them are pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's like, did that help me prepare? I don't know, but it was very easy to do. It took me 5 minutes to ask it that. And I wasn't sitting there, holding its hand while it's doing it. So could I have researched those things, put those things together? I could have, but I probably wouldn't have done it just because it would have taken physically just too long. So,
well, one thing I like about that direction of thinking is that like what you just named is the sort of thing that I would have my VAs do. And so not most people don't have VAs. Most people don't have, I know how to hire those people. I know how to get them on board and don't necessarily have the finances. And I'm going to get better output from a VA than I will from an LLM. But even with my VAs, I'm like saying, like, what things should I be delegating to you and what things should I be delegating to an AI? And also, in what way do LLMs support people who don't have access to VAs? Maybe it's only 60% as good, but it's better than 0% in terms of helping me out. So it's fun kind of thinking about, in some ways, LLMs are just like teaching a lot of people how to delegate in a way. Because, the more you go into leadership, the more you're doing solo dev work, the more you have to learn how to either delegate to different portions of yourself, right? I'm in developer mode today, I'm in writer mode today, or you got to find other people who you're delegating to, or, LLMs that you're delegating to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those, like you said, it's delegation, right? If you ask you could put in the same, 2 people could be trying to get to the same, sort of result. And based on prompts and things of how you asked, right? Same thing with a person. I mean, if you ask the person to go about something and they're very literal, and they do something very literally and they give you this result and it's like, well, this isn't what I wanted. It's like, well, that's what you said. And so it's, it's trying to find that balance. So I kind of see it as something similar to that. But like I said, I'm hoping they hit me up on, overcharges of bandwidth or something. Like I'm going to use it as much as possible. I'm going to throw away the parts that I don't want or don't need. I only see as a advantage, right? It's like at worst case scenario, I'm using a small portion of my time to sort of get some of these results. And I just kind of pick and choose the parts that I like from the result.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about how you got to where you are, because one of the key components, and I'm sure you got this in your research to this podcast, is showing people who've done things that a lot of people aspire to do using Laravel and saying, hey, what does it look like for me to get there? And so you have, first of all, you've got Ghostable, which is a exciting platform that is, fun and sexy. And then you also have successful, built a thing, fundraised, and then eventually had successful acquisition. So if somebody were to look and just listen to Joe Rucci and go, that's the guy I want to be, what's part of the story of getting there? And I'm job experiences, life ideologies, books, courses? What gets you to where you are?
I think one of the biggest things is just kind of, and this sounds cliche, but you that old adage of like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I think there's something really meaningful there, right? Like if you don't do this, it's not going to happen. And that just sounds like, it's almost like a deepity, right? It's like, yes, obviously, but it's shocking, like how many people I've talked to that are like, I've got this really good idea, and then there's no practical steps to actually getting that thing launched. Mm-hmm. And then they see something like, maybe Curricula, which has this big exit moment, and people are like, wow, but you guys did this and you guys did this. And it's like, yeah, but it all just started with trying it, right? And you got to go for it. So as corny and maybe unhelpful as that answer is, I think you really do just have to go for it. If you sit on the sidelines, you will be out. And you're not going to have that startup that you wanted. You're going to have to do it. So
I'm very curious about the origin story, if you don't mind me, of Curricula, because I there's several sets of folks I know who are like, me and 3 of my buddies all sat down and created. I've never done that before. I've created something with another person a few times before, but never. So what kind of? Because I think that hearing that story might help someone say, oh, well, I've got a group of friends with an idea like that. So like what actually led to y'all going from we're friends to we have started a business together?
Yeah. So my co-founder and I actually met in kindergarten. We've been friends our whole life.
No way.
Yeah, we didn't have the idea for Curricula back then. But we did start companies before Curricula even together, right? So like our first company, not official, but like sort of official company was a skateboarding company. We've got some skateboards here in the background. So we used to skateboard when we were kids, and we were going to this contest in Asbury Park, New Jersey, because we were going to skateboard in the Warped Tour, or we wanted to. And if you won in this contest, you could actually get into the Warped Tour. You get free tickets. Okay. So it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. But when we got there, you needed a sponsor, right? So you needed some company to sign on the dotted line that says like, oh, I'm promoting so-and-so. And it was free to enter. And it was like, okay, so we don't have a sponsor. What are we going to do? We go outside. We're like, we got to write something down. Like, we got to come up with something. So we make up our company right there, write it on this piece of paper, go in. We did well enough to win. Not win the whole thing, but we placed high enough to be able to go into the Warped Tour and skateboard in it that summer. And that was kind of like, hey, after we did this, and it was kind of funny story, and it was like, we should actually do this though. This would be a good idea. So we just started hustling. We started printing t-shirts. I remember we called this skateboarding manufacturer that made the blank boards in Canada. And we were like, what's the minimum number that we could possibly get? They're like, well, we have these tester runs that we could give you guys 10 boards. We're like, oh yeah, we'll do it. So we got these 10 boards. We hand painted them. It's like, I know how to make logos. And then it's like, well, who knows how to make a website? It's like, I got a computer, right? So I'll do that. So there you go. And then you start learning about marketing and logos and hey, should we get backlinks? What's a backlink? I don't know. Yeah. It's like when someone links to from their website to your website, and it's like, oh, this is really cool. And you kind of get this ins and outs of just, I don't know, how to make a business when you're 12 years old, right? So this has kind of been with us for a long time. Yeah. And then we both go on. I started working at an ad agency in New York called Gray Advertising at the time. I was 18. It was like, this is a cool, exciting gig. I never went to college. I was like, I just went and I applied. They were doing internships at the time. Okay. And I went and applied for the internship. They were also hiring apparently for full-time roles. I was unaware. But at the end of the interview, they thought that I was doing the full-time one. So they were like, do you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, great. And I thought it was amazing. I'm like, I'm going to get healthcare. I'm 18 years old. This is amazing, right? So I went off. I did this ad agency. I was working in New York. My buddy goes into cybersecurity. He goes more formal education route. So we're off on our, different directions. He, at some point, in 2014, maybe tail end of 2014, we circle back. We're at, hanging out during the holidays. I think it was Christmas. And he's like, hey, man, I got this crazy idea for a company. And I'm like, all right, lay it on me, because I think in a lot of founders, you've got different roles. It's like, so for me, I'm the builder guy. I'll make the 100%. Website. I'll draw the logo. I could do this. I could do this. But I'm not always the domain knowledge guy. It's not my first thought to think cybersecurity, where's the gaps or the pain points in this as a thing. Yeah. But he brought it to my attention, and he was like, yeah, so there's this regulatory body. They have to receive training. So it's a required product, but the current training is awful. And it's like, and this is an important thing because it protects the power grid. And it's like, all we got to do is make really good version of this, and we're going to do great with it. So that's kind of where the idea started. And then it expanded from there. And it was like, all right, let's make general cybersecurity training. Let's make a phishing simulator. And we, just sort of expanded on that path. So I guess, my like advice to people that are listening, if you're not sure, if like maybe you're the builder person, you're not the idea person, it just doesn't like walk past you and say like, oh, I should reinvent this, market or something. Yeah. Listen to your friends. I call it like tech therapy. Like go find somebody outside of your domain. Yeah. Right? Like not a developer, go find somebody else and ask them like, what's the worst technical part of your day to day? What are you doing, as far as like using a computer, is there, maybe it's not even using a computer. Maybe it's something more on the physical level, right? But you got to hear all of this information to be able to say, oh, that sounds like something we could fix with software, or that sounds like something we could, correct over here. So yeah, I think like really just kind of focus in on the outside domain beyond developer tools. Obviously Ghostable developer tool, but it's solo, right? So like, I'm not the idea guy. I got to stay in my domain. Yep. But yeah, like if you do have the opportunity to talk to other people on a regular, I have a lot of friends that are teachers. I'm always asking them like, what's the worst part of like software that you use at work? Right. Yeah. Like, and they'll tell me all kinds of horror stories, and then they'll show me like a website, and I'm like, we could rebuild this entire thing. Like, this is ridiculous. This is what you have to use. That's kind of where it starts. So, hopefully, just kind of go down that path with as many people as you can. And you're bound to come up with something, I think.
That's really good stuff. It's 40 minutes. I hate it. I hate the time limit I've come to myself. Okay, let's do the wrapping up questions, and we're going to have to hang out again soon.
Absolutely.
So my last 3 questions are always, are you hiring? Is there anything you want to plug? And then the fun question about what would you do tomorrow? Okay, so are you hiring, or do you think there's any chance of you hiring? Or are you like, this is going to be a solo forever?
I get this question a lot. I feel like I'm intentionally lean at the moment. I think that's going to be, at least for the first year, until I really absolutely know what the product is and where it's going to go. I'm not opposed to hiring, but I think for right now, this is going to be a solo venture. But I will keep you posted if that does change. And we'll take it from there.
So if people were interested in following, whether because they want a job or because they think you're fascinating, where do they do that?
Go to ghostable.dev. And you can hit me up on there. There's a contact, or hit me up, joe@ghostable.dev. I don't do a lot of social media, so don't look on LinkedIn for me. You won't find me.
Like, you're not anywhere. So.
That was very intentional. I don't know, nothing against everybody that is using it. For me, it just wasn't like a huge value add. I didn't see it as bringing a lot, so I never really got into it. Just email me, old school, I'll answer.
Okay. So one of the questions I ask is there anything you want to plug? And I'm kind of guessing that's Ghostable, but is there anything else, or do you want to give another pitch for Ghostable?
No. Yeah, ghostable.dev. Shout out everybody at Curricula. Shout out Huntress. They're doing really awesome stuff. Anybody that needs cybersecurity, end-to-end, hardcore stuff, go look at them. They have great products. They are great people. I think that's it.
Okay. And my last one, and I love asking this question to people who've had a successful exit before, because you know better than anybody else. But if you were offered $100 million for Ghostable today, what would you do tomorrow?
100 million is a lot. That's a good number.
It's got to be a big number.
I mean, I think I would be doing the exact same thing, to be honest. I just think maybe I would do more of it. Yeah. I guess, like I would spin up multiple versions for some of these different ideas that I have, right? So instead of like, hey, Joe, focus on one lane, it's like, okay, maybe I'll do 3 of these lanes. I don't know. I think like physical businesses are always kind of interesting to me. There's like this allure of like something as simple as like, you go from software where you have these like, subscription models and everything is like Stripe and all this. And it's like, what about just like a hot dog stand and just like a really good hot dog, just sell that, right? Like that feels
everybody
kind of
in the
fun.
neighborhood knows you and you're just, the hot dog guy.
Yeah. There's no like support. There's no, like, you don't really have to get into the complications of software development. There's no version 2. It's the hot dog cart, sell it. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe I'll make a hot dog cart if I had 100 million.
Excuse me. I'm going to say you are the first person who's answered that question with a hot dog cart. So I feel like that's a sign. It's a calling. My wife and I have talked a lot. We just moved to a new neighborhood, and there's a lot of vacant business opportunities there. And we're like, ugh, there's so many businesses that we would love to start in this local physical thing that's connected to your neighborhood, and you're exchanging real dollars, and there's real people. You're handing a product over the counter. It's just so different than a lot of our jobs. So.
Well, and it's funny too, is you talk to people that do have physical businesses, and they're saying the same thing about software. They're like, if I could just make a web page and I don't have to like do all this stuff and have a storefront and all this stuff I got to worry about in parking lots and all this. And it's like, it's just, I don't know.
So the grass is greener. Yeah, the idea of not of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to start prepping the dough, that sounds less appealing than our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
Joe, I wish we could talk for hours longer. It is such a pleasure to see you again. It's such a pleasure to talk to you again. And thank you so much for coming on to share all this with us.
Thank you for having me. I do really appreciate it. Thank you.
And of course, for the rest of you, we will see you all next time.